What's up YouTube? Welcome to this new time-lapse of EU4 1.28.3. That's the patch. Still in the Golden Century. Golden Century Spain. Spain won Fate World Conquest attempt. This one's gonna fail. That's why I'm going to make the video now. Well, basically for the World Conquest I could succeed. I already have the achievement, so I don't have an incentive to finish that. And for one Fate, we're running out of time. I made the calculations, I'm missing about 15 years. So we're gonna have to start over. So I'm going to make a time-lapse of this one still because, well, you guys want one. And second, there's a bunch of stuff to learn from this one. Stuff I didn't know, even I. So, we'll go for it. I'll go into the ideas first and then the reforms and all that, and then we'll do the time-lapse, just so that you guys understand what's up. So, first thing, I don't think the religious ideas being 4 is a problem, because in the early game the problem is that you don't expand fast enough to have stuff to convert, so there's no point taking it early. The only point that would be is for the CB. But then all you have really that you can do something on with this CB is this, and then eventually North Africa when you get there. I'll explain, but we didn't colonize, as you can see. Well, we colonized a bit because we're Spain, so we have a colonist. But that one was just used to gain range across Africa to get to India. I didn't go... India, I'll explain later why, but basically the point was to go... basically do a world conquest early until I started stacking provinces to convert, and that I was stacking those provinces faster than I could convert them. Then I took religious ideas, which is pretty much fourth. So diplomatic for the province war score, offensive for the land force modifier, humanist for the rebels, and then we're down to the religious for the obvious reason, then admin because it's still world conquest. So we want the corn cost reduction. I didn't need it earlier. I was pretty lucky on the rulers, but not that super lucky. It's not like I had 666 the whole game. And then, well, aristocratic is an interesting one. It's just that I didn't know what to take for offensive, and at that point, that's what I needed. So we went for leaders. It's basically for the leader siege. Also, this helps a bit get better generals. And then I took influence because I had a bunch of stuff to annex, so that would just speed it up. And then we're just taking quality last for the sake of it. And then in the government reforms, for going wide, I would always take the same thing with one exception that would change. This I don't change, it's irrelevant. I always take this. At this point it doesn't show, but when you take this in the early game, while you still have nobles, this will curtail them. And the problem is most nations starts with massive land given to the nobles, which makes them close to taking over if you want to use the options to get the points and all that. So yeah, I take that. Then we took the cultures. I would always take the cultures for a wide run. First, it helps getting a bit more stable. It also helps you get the cultures for the age of absolutism here, when you need a multicultural nation to have 5 accepted cultures. Well, we did take humanists, so it was unnecessary here for that. But if you don't take humanists early, by the time you get to absolutism, you won't have your 5 cultures. You'll always have 4, and the 5th take 2 techs later. If you take this, you'll have them right away. Then here we take the free policy. The advisor cost could be useful too, but I usually take the free policy, especially since we're gonna take the annexation one. I'll get through that after. Now here is the one that you might change, because we have 95 absolutism, right? So you could get 100 without court and country by taking the royal decree. I like to take the parliament. 2 reasons, especially for one fate. There are 2 reasons. One, there's one debate that will give you the 15% in reduced cost for annexation. And again, I'll get through it, but we'll have basically 50% of Europe was subject at some point. So that would help. Also, you have a debate that will give you an extra missionary and an extra missionary strength, which is going to be very helpful for one fate. One thing though, that's one thing I learned in this that I didn't know. If you have humanist ideas, even just started humanist ideas, that debate does not show up. I was wondering eventually why I'm never seeing it. I thought I was unlucky, so I made research. I did some research, and yeah, if you have humanist ideas, that debate doesn't show up. So you might want to not take humanist ideas. That would create more rebels. I don't know if it would slow you down faster than if you have the debate. Because if you slow down because of rebels, then you're gonna have less stuff to convert. So it's something to test if this is worth more than the debate. Also, having the debate means you don't have the debate for the annexations. So there's that. And then the last one, well, here we take the states. Some would argue that this is better. I will still say this is better. This won't save you eventually to get the 0.8, the full territory thing. I still think that this is more, since you're gonna put that in big states. I still think this is more income than just getting 10% reduced on all territories. I never tried it, so I can't say 100%. There might be more value in this in an extremely wide run, where you have so many territories. And then the last one is obvious. It's political absolutism for the absolutism, because these are conversions to other government, and this is useless. So there's that. In terms of policies, we'll have a bunch of stuff for a while. I have another one for missionary strength here that I was using. It's not going to help me for the one fate to finish it. I switched it to this once with finished influence, but we basically had 2 missionary strength here, and this one, which we have to act. And then this with offensive humanist is just too strong to remove. And then here we just took what we could, because, well, we didn't have that many options for a while, so we took the one we could took. We can have 2 free here, so the third one we pay. In terms of ideas, too, an interesting thing to see, we kept Castilian ideas instead of taking Spanish ideas. Nowadays, Spanish ideas loses the missionary and the missionary strength, and the settlers, we didn't care much about the settlers, but we wanted the missionary strength and the missionary for the purpose of one fate. Yeah, the big thing is we didn't colonize, again, as I explained, mainly because Spain, with its mission tree, is in its position to remove basically all the colonizers, with the exception of France, and then you border France, so that you can take care of yourself. So, like, most of this, as you can see, this is British, French, British, and British, right? This one I formed later, that's it. And I formed it just by eating natives. I'll explain why the British had so many colonies in the mission tree. So for those who don't know, first of all, you get the Iberian wedding. I'll explain with the time lapse. We get started on that. So, we're Castile. We're gonna get Granada first. Eventually, we'll get the wedding with Aragon and Naples. For those who don't know, this is easy to trigger if you get a bit lucky early. So first of all, you have your shitty ruler that's a 112, and then you have your heir that's a 000. You want to kick out your heir, so do that before you take actions with the estates, because the estate actions will cost you prestige. If you end up negative prestige, you can't remove your heir. And then removing heir is important. First, he sucks, you don't want him to take over, but second, because he's gone and your ruler is about 40 years old, there's a good chance that he dies. And even if you have an heir, you end up with a regency council. Well, not a regency council, but a regency with the queen. And this still counts because she's the ruler at that moment. She still counts as a female. The Iberian wedding event happens if the ruler of Castile and Aragon are different genders. So assuming Aragon doesn't do anything weird or his ruler doesn't die super early, you'll end up having a female regent, which is a female ruler for the purpose of that event, with the King of Aragon, so then you'll have the wedding trigger pretty fast. And you want it to happen fast because Aragon tends to lose Naples eventually with rebels and shit. So the faster you do that, the less time Aragon has to lose Naples, so you have Aragon and Naples automatically. As soon as you have this, so mainland Iberia land, as long as you have all this, either you or a subject, Navarro is easy because the mission that gives you Granada gives you Navarro as well. At worst, it's going to end up a personal union of Aragon. And when the Iberian wedding happens, people were afraid that you'd end up with a personal union of Navarro, but when the wedding happens, he annexes Navarro, so that's not a problem. So once you have all of this, you'll get a mission to personal union Portugal, so it's important to not ally Portugal early game. So yeah, Granada will get this one we won't see in the missions. We allied the Pope early to get papal influence. and we'll keep him allied until the 1600s. By the 1600s, you can remove the Pope because excommunications don't happen anymore, so he's not dangerous. The main thing is I didn't want to get excommunicated. So the main thing we'll do is go through Africa, really. Now, once we see that we take southern France, because I was ready to go slap France and kick him out before he starts colonizing. France, you have a bit of time because he never takes exploration first. He usually goes second. If you're unlucky, usually third or even fourth. England started early. Sometimes he doesn't colonize early. Sometimes he takes exploration expansion first and second. Nothing you can do about that. A big thing here was to remove the shores from these guys. So one thing is Morocco is pretty easy. You have missions for the north, and then this is pretty easy after that. Tunis, you want to go pretty fast because he usually allies the Ottomans, because they are both enemies of the Mamluks. Another thing to save points, Aragon can take up to 15 provinces off the start. So generally speaking, what I would do is give them this state and this state. Then they finish this one because we couldn't take this in that war. And you'll see I'll give him southern France. Now that was a bit annoying in my run. I'll explain why in a second, but yeah, look at your mission, your decisions, the decisions to form Spain diplomatically. If you mouse over the question mark of the decision, you'll have a list of things, and one thing will say, if you're Castile, Aragon can have max number of cities. A city is a province, so, and it will give you the number they currently have. So you need one less than the max. So if they are at the max, then you won't be able to form Spain. But technically it's 15 more, so you can give them much here, much here. Yeah. So as soon as I did this, gave all of this to Aragon, as soon as I did this and unpaused, I ended up with Savoy having a personal union on France, and the game calling me to contest it. We contested, obviously, so we'll end up with France as a personal union. Which is why this is annoying, because this was a gross expansion I didn't need. Also, I could have fed more stuff to Aragon, but whatever. So we have France, also we got the inheritance, so this was basically a perfect run early game, which is why it sucks that it didn't work out. Two things happened that were bad. First of all, Great Britain never converted, and the Spanish missionary gives you a personal union on Great Britain if Great Britain is not Catholic, well, if it's not the same religion as you. If it is the same religion, and in this case Great Britain stayed Catholic, then I don't know what okay. Then it's just permanent claims on England, which slows you down, therefore gives time to Great Britain to colonize, which is why you colonize that much. It's not that bad because you inherit the colonial nations anyways, it just takes more time too. On the bright side, but it's not exactly a bright side, but the perfect thing that could happen is he converts to Anglican, usually. Like, that you have the personality available before the Anglican event happens, and then you wait until the Anglican event happens. You switches to Anglican, so only his capital is Anglican, and then you PU him before he converts everything. So that you don't have to reconvert all of Great Britain in his colonies. That would be the best. You get Great Britain in one shot. Yeah. And then by this 1560-ish, the second thing that's bad will happen. So once you're done with the lowlands, which we're done now, and it's converted, that's the one thing. You have a personal union on Austria in the mission tree, but for it to happen, you need the whole state of Wallonia, which is these 5 states, and then Flanders, which is these 3, but also all of this needs to be Catholic. And the problem, my problem in this run is that Brabant had been converted by a center right before I conquered it, so I had to wait the full 30 years before I could convert it again. The good thing is Austria ate all of this right before I personal union it, But the main thing that happened that was crap is that, so I eventually, okay, I have the personal union at this point. I get a personal union, so I declared on Austria for the personal union. As soon as I declared the war, the Protestant League formed, and because I was fighting the Emperor and kicking his ass, then the Protestant triggered. So I basically helped the Protestants win, without being in the League myself. So the Protestants won, and that's the main thing, because then I couldn't become Emperor and revoke the privilege. So I had to deal with Germany myself and then reconvert it. If it had stayed Catholic, then I could have become Emperor, because Austria was not part of the competition anymore. And because Catholic would have been the dominant, not dominant, but official faith, I could have just diplomatically asked those people to reconvert. And then once revoked, it would be my subjects, so I would be able to subsidize them so that they convert themselves. So that's the main thing. We also get a personal union in the Commonwealth. That's not a lucky thing, we have it at this point. That's not exactly a lucky thing if you know what you're doing. So the way to get the personal union in the Commonwealth, that's assuming the lucky part is the Commonwealth not blowing up. Very often in the early game, Poland, even if they get Lithuania, will blow up to either the Ottoman or Austria or Russia or both, even Denmark. So that's the lucky part, that the Commonwealth doesn't blow up. But if it doesn't and it forms like this, by the time it forms, it's unlikely that it's going to explode. So if it forms, then you know that it's going to stick there and it's going to be worth it to personal union. At that point, it's pretty easy to get the personal union on them because they have elective monarchy. That's if they took Lithuania. If they didn't take Lithuania, they're going to blow up and the Commonwealth's not going to form anyways. So that's pointless. If they take Lithuania, Poland becomes elective monarchy. If they become elective monarchy, I explained the details in the Poland run that I did a few days ago, but basically, with the elective monarchy in place, if Poland ends up having a ruler that's 1 or 0 admin, they will get an event called Pacta Conventa. That's a permanent modifier as long as they are elective monarchy. If they have that modifier by 1600, in the 1600, between 1600 and 1610, they will have a disaster called the Royal Struggle for Power. It's an event, but it really works like a disaster. And the AI will always, when it happens, you have a choice between becoming a republic or siding with the monarchists. If you side with the monarchists, which the AI always does, it spawns a bunch of rebels, they kill the rebels, they become a normal monarchy. Because they become a normal monarchy, and because during the elective monarchy, the heir was an elected heir, the heir will be kicked out no matter what, because he's not in line anymore. It's like this, the rules of succession changes. Because of that, the Commonwealth will end up having no heir, guaranteed, as soon as the disaster ends. So what you do is you need to make sure that you have the same dynasty as them. The thing is, it's easy to have the same dynasty as Poland while elective monarchy, because all you have to do is send a diplomat to them that supports an heir. Now, while Austria exists and is independent, if they are not rivals to Poland, it's going to be it's going to be pretty difficult to get the heir, because they'll have diplomats to rent. Basically, they'll have so many diplomats that they'll always send one to Poland, because they are diplomatic. The support air mechanic is mainly based on diplomatic reputation. Because they have so much diplomatic reputation, they have diplomats to spare. They'll always have one there, and it's almost impossible to beat them. But as Spain, well, you PU for Austria, so they get out of the way. So the sooner you do that, the better. Then you can support your heir in Poland. Most likely, because we took diplomatic early, will most likely be the next in line, which has happened here. In our case, we ended up actually having the Polish dynasty on us, because, well, our dynasty died and we had the Piast dynasty. I guess they got it from Mazovia, while Mazovia was still existent. That's irrelevant anyways. Point is, we had the same dynasty. In our case, we got their dynasty, but it's easy to put your dynasty on their throne if you support their heir. And once they have your dynasty, or you have their dynasty, as soon as you have both the same dynasty, and the Royal Struggle happens, and they have no heir, make sure that you're not allied anymore by then. You still can ally them early, but like by 1600, I would break the lines. Don't rival them or whatnot, because you still want the marriage, so that you can claim the throne, because that's the point. You get the same dynasty, to support air mechanic. The royal struggle happens. When you see the rebels prepare for the war, eventually they'll kill the rebels. Once the rebels are killed, keep an eye on their diplomatic screen. Eventually you'll see the hair disappear. When the hair disappears, you'll know that the active monarchy is gone. You'll be able to claim the throne. Also make sure that you have more prestige than them, because claiming throne requires you to have more prestige than them. And once you have more prestige than them, same dynasty, they don't have an heir, claim throne, PU them. There you go. So we PU the Commonwealth, we PU with France, the Commonwealth, Portugal, Aragon, Naples, Austria. That was the huge thing in this run. We could have a PU also in Great Britain, but it didn't happen for the reasons I explained. So at this point, I'm just trying to beat the clock. Nothing much left to say. For one fate, and this is just my opinion really, for one fate, you want to focus on nations that are not your religion first, because it's not a world conquest. It usually ends up being a world conquest because you need to convert so much stuff that you end up having as much land as a world conquest requires. Also, you can't trust the colonizers. Like, even if Great Britain was Catholic, I had to beat Great Britain, because the problem is they colonize in trade companies, they add the land to the trade companies, and then that doesn't get converted. So you at the very least need the trade companies. Problem is, as long as there's something to colonize, you take the trade companies, you leave them alive, they'll just recolonize something the next month. But yeah, besides the nations that are your religion, the nations that can be left behind and be done last is Ming and Korea, because they are Confucian, and Confucian are programmed, due to their mechanics, to not convert whatsoever, because converting is actually hurting them. It costs our money to convert. That's their own mechanic. So these can be left behind, because the point is you don't want people to convert by the end, because whenever a province is converted, it's 30 years of religious zeal. The only way to deal with religious zeal is to release a nation on that province, which is an OPM, and then force them to convert in the... I'll just explain something here, but in the vassal interaction screen, if you force convert a subject, their capital automatically gets converted, even if it has religious zeal. Problem is, it's not going to convert the other provinces, and it doesn't work with a client state, because the client state spawns as your religion, and that doesn't convert their capital. So yeah, zeal is a problem in the end game, because as the game progresses past Age of Absolutism, foreign cores are going to start disappearing, except the main tag of cultures, which is not always what you need. What I want to explain here is by the 1700, the first action, now that's for World Conquest style run, the first action you want to take in the age actions is the unlimited conquest, which lets you core whatever you want, wherever. One thing you can do with that is, especially if you have diplomatic ideas with it, is take the forts, like level 8 fort sucks, right? So in the first war of a nation, in a big nation like Russia, by example, you can take all their forts. No, Russia didn't have much. I wouldn't take the capital, because they're just going to move and create another fort on that capital. So you're just hurting yourself by doing that. But basically you take all the forts that they have, since with that action you can core whatever you want. So even if it's not connected whatsoever, I still can core it. And then I take this just so that they stop colonizing and buying land here. And then if you really want to go crazy, I didn't do it here, but like you can just peace out, bring your armies back home, finish coring those provinces, and then attack them again with breaking a truce. Because they didn't have time to react, they won't have any forts, so just siege their capital, and then you'll be finishing the war pretty damn fast. And a side note, this is a client state. I'll have another one here soon, here in Russia. So yeah, right now we're just speeding up to get to the point where we were. So things are going to start disappearing pretty damn fast. One trick too is you want to landlock nations as much as possible, because having a port increases dramatically the diplomatic range of nations. and in this patch, and since a few patches, the AI likes to guarantee shit that is bordering you, if it's small enough for them to guarantee. Which can ruin your... Because at this point in the World Conquest, what you'll do is you'll end up fighting and chaining wars while you're coring stuff. Problem is, by example, in my case, I fought the Deccan, I took stuff from the Deccan here. And then I wanted to go to the Timurids, but then the Deccan was guaranteeing the Timurids. So I couldn't fight that war, because if I did that, then I would be fighting the Deccan, stopping my cores that were in progress on the Deccan. So, well, I couldn't really landlock the Deccan, that's the thing here, but like, as much as you can landlock your nations, by being landlocked, it limits their diplomatic range can only be reached by land. So, and it cannot go through foreign countries. So like Persia's landlocked, like this, again, this has no ports. They need a port to increase their diplomatic range by sea. So that's another thing. These are client states. And that's pretty much it. Like, it went well. Africa was done. We had one war left on Kilwa. This is Korea, whatever. The natives were pretty much done. The only thing that was left were those, and this I was keeping for the end. Another problem is that Ming ended up colonizing. For those who wonder why sometimes the Ottomans colonizes, or like China or India, whatever, is that the game, when a nation is ready to take a new idea group, they'll always look at exploration, expansion, exploration first. And they'll want it, but they'll look at how many nations are already colonizing. Well, first they'll look if they have at least one province in range, one colony in range. If they don't, they're not going to take it. And then if they have a colony in range, they'll look at how many nations are already colonizing. And if there's, I'm not sure about the number, but I think it's 5 to 6 from what I've seen. If there's that many nations that already colonizes, they're not going to colonize, because they'll feel it's a dead idea group, because there's going to be too much competition. So yeah, killing the colonizers will create new colonizers. So there might be an argument to keep the colonizers as an OPM in inland OPM, like a landlocked OPM. The problem is that if they have colonial nations, you'll have to take your colonial nations yourself, because doing that will most likely make the colonial nations work for you. Another thing about that is that another thing that I learned in this run is that the lucky modifiers, like if you play in Iron Man, you always have 7 nations that are lucky. And usually it starts as France, Great Britain, the Ottomans, blah blah blah. Like, now, apparently it's all the great powers at the start of the game, except if you play as one of the great powers, like we did with Castile. Then it's going to be it's not the great powers, from what I've seen, because the Papal State is not lucky. But just to explain from the start, according to the wiki, and I've seen some data that seems to contradict this, but not enough to make sure that it's a lie. So apparently is the 8th largest nations by development. That gets the lucky nation modifier. If you play one of them, then it's going to be the 9th one is going to replace you. Now you can't exactly trust this, because there are big development countries that, well, not at the very start, but by example, right now the Oirat is much bigger than the Papal State, but it can't be a great power because it's a subject. Now tributaries will count as being towards being lucky, but won't be a great power. By example, the Art currently is lucky, while not being great power, while the Papal State, being great power, is not lucky. And yeah, it's a great power Papal State with like one province and a few overseas that they bought. It's just funny. It's the funny thing when you end up doing a world conquest, eventually you end up with these great powers. But anyway, so yeah, the lucky nation modifier point here is that it gets inherited as lucky nations are killed or made subjects. So I was wondering why the Timurids and the Deccan always had 3-star generals, and that explains it. Because the Timurids is lucky, the Deccan is lucky. Ming, who's not supposed to be lucky, is lucky. Ming is an exception, by the way. Ming doesn't start lucky, but he gets it if he gets it by development. Lucky. Like everything that's left basically is lucky. Even Persia, which I killed like twice, is lucky. So yeah. So to keep in mind the colonizing thing plus the lucky nation, I would consider that keeping the lucky nations that colonizes, like France, Great Britain, Spain if you're not Spain, keep them landlocked with their colonizing ideas and their lucky modifier. As long as they're alive, it cannot be spread to someone else and then kill them last. Because the lucky nation has the nasty effect of giving them +1 tradition. It has multiple modifiers, but the most annoying one is the +1 army and navy tradition. On top of their ideas and all that, they will easily get 100 tradition, which creates 3-star generals across the freaking place. We have the numbers to beat that. It just makes it harder. Not hard. Hard is not the right word, but it makes it less easy, I guess, to fight them. And for those who were here when we did this run on stream on Twitch, like Japan, by example, ended up with it and had 366 generals. I sent 200,000 troops there to fight 150k, and whenever we fought, like my infantry would melt after 2 ticks, and then my cannons would get murdered. It was the hardest war I fought in the game, and it was at one point where I had over 1 million men. So yeah, 3-star generals are annoying, and the lucky modifier helps them get that. So there you go. For reference, for those who never did a world conquest and are afraid of doing it, by the end game, assuming if you have Mandate of Heaven and all that, like all the modifiers you can get, this, which is like what, 35 years left ish, 36 years left, we can world conquest that. World conquest, definitely, probably with subjects, but the world conquest achievement is achievable with what's left here. It's the one fate I can't finish because we still have a bunch of stuff to convert here, and my problem, we have Zeal here, and this we took from Deccan, and the problem is Deccan is Bahmanus. Bahmanus is Shia, he owns Hindu land, and he's converting. And as I explained, in 6 years from now, but by 6 years from now, and can I fully annex in him? Maybe, if I break truce. Problem is I'm converting his shit, so I have like a year and a half to wait here, and then take like 200 overextension, wait another 2 years to core it, and then eat the rest. Problem is, if he's still alive in 6 years, and he converts 1 province, we can't do anything about it. Because, well, this, depending on where, we could release, as I said, release as a subject and then convert. But yeah, is the main problem, because I explained Confucian doesn't convert. Buddhist tends to not convert. They can, but they tend not to. Yeah. And there you go. I hope that helps you learn something, if it's not for one fate. Yeah, main thing is colonizing. Stopping the colonizers, that's the main thing that Spain has the advantage on. Plus, it's the best religion, the best country as it is to convert with. It's even better than the Orthodox in terms of numbers. They miss 1 missionary, but they have more missionary strength due to decisions that Orthodox don't get, and they have the +2 here. That'd be like, this is the equivalent of the Orthodox modifier if you have full authority. They get 1 missionary here, but problem is Catholics don't get Rome, and they don't get the Pentarchy modifier. Well, so Orthodox has 1 more missionary, doesn't have this. The problem is, if you want to do a world conquest 1 fate, you'll probably go Russia, and Tsardom cannot have a parliament, and parliament is another missionary. So technically they are on par missionaries, on par with missionary strength, but then Spain will get, as Catholic, will get more decisions, so overall they'll get more modifiers. On top of that, Catholics have all these modifiers here, so it can help a lot with the aggressor expansion. Though Orthodox still has good aggressor expansion reduction for the early game. Main thing with Russia, the problem is it's gonna be much harder to stop the colonizers, so you have a much more land to convert here. We did waste a lot of time converting this from Britain, because for some reason these colonies would not convert anything in the natives. But here we go. This video has been going over 30 minutes. I'm gonna stop here. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe as well, to follow on Twitch if you're interested to watch me live. All my runs that I do time lapses on are done live as well on Twitch before the uploading. I already have another time lapse that's going to be ready in a few days with Yemen. We did protect the secret achievement, which was to keep the coffee out of the hands of the European nations until 1700. We achieved the achievement. I'll post it in a few days. I'm not sure what's going to be the next run, but I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye.